Hello and welcome to this episode of Bullseye, my weekly deep dive into issues of significance, issues that matter, and some that need to be explained. This is our way of bringing you clarity from clutter. This is Ink Goa, and I'm Shujoy Gupta. The subject at hand is when power becomes politics, does a politician need a ticket to serve the people? Now, this is something quite revealing happening inside the Goa BJP as the state begins to move into the 2027 Assembly elections. It is not unusual for politicians to compete for tickets. That is fine. In fact, it would be strange if they did not. A politician wants to contest, he wants to win, and wants to hold office. This is the nature of electoral politics. But what we are beginning to see in the Goa BJP, beyond ordinary competition for tickets, is this whole urge to get a ticket at any cost. In several constituencies, there appears to be a struggle taking place over political survival, with senior leaders trying to ensure that they remain electorally relevant even if the circumstances change around them. And that raises a larger question, which I think is worth asking, not just of the BJP, but BJP in particular, but politicians in general. But we are focusing on the BJP because the BJP claims that it is a party with a difference. And the question is, does a political leader actually need a ticket, an election victory, and a position in the government in order to serve the people? The question becomes particularly relevant when we look at what happened around a minister in the BJP's cabinet, Subhash Phal Dessai, the senior MLA from Sanguem, and arguably one of the very few BJP members or BJP ministers who are originally from BJP. Because the BJP in Goa is nothing but the Congress wearing BJP jerseys. Now, the scheduled tribe reservation affecting Sanguem, as I had said earlier, has affected Subhash Phal Dessai very badly. Now, he's a sitting MLA, he's a sitting minister. Now, the possibility that Sanguem could eventually be affected by ST reservation carries a very obvious problem for him, because he simply cannot continue contesting from Sanguem if it is a reserved constituency. It's a very clear mathematics. Now, there is nothing unreasonable about a politician being concerned about that. A constituency is where a politician builds an organization, develops relationships, creates a support base, and more importantly, creates a power center. A MLA, or especially a minister, thinks of himself or herself as kings and queens of their constituencies. And they construct their political career around this fanfare, this literal worshipping, these darbars that they have. Losing the constituency is a significant political setback. And that is how the politicians look at it. Now, what was striking was the manner in which Phal Dessai reacted earlier. He spoke about having no way forward and seeing darkness ahead. His supporters subsequently gathered around him, and there was pressure for him to remain in Sanguem. He did try to create a narrative that without him, BJP cannot have anybody else in Sanguem. This was the impression that was conveyed. The episode became eminently and very sufficiently uncomfortable for the BJP leadership, and the situation actually had to be managed. Phal Dessai later met Chief Minister Pramod Sawant and then took a more conciliatory position. Now, we can interpret all this in different ways. Was Phal Dessai placated by telling him, look, the reservation has still not happened, there is much water to flow down the Mandrem and the Zuari, we don't know whether we'll be able to ultimately do it before elections, or he was told something else? But this emotional reaction from a politician may be justified. It could be a moment of frustration. But the legitimate question that needs to be asked is about the way politicians like Phal Dessai and others perceive their own role as politicians. If a politician spent years telling people that he's working with them, then surely his ability to remain useful for those people does not disappear mainly because he loses a seat. He may no longer be able to contest from there. He may no longer be an MLA. He may no longer be a minister. But he can still remain involved in public life. Why is that such a big problem? He can still represent the interests of the people. He can still organize, campaign, raise issues, and work politically. Why is all this not appealing to him? Why does a loss of a constituency appear to produce a sense of political darkness? Of course, he has changed his stand. He has later said he's going to support whichever candidate. All of that he has said after the meeting with the Chief Minister. But his initial reaction is something that I'm focusing on because it takes us to the heart of what political power is supposed to be. Is power an instrument through which you serve people, or does political office itself become the reason for being in politics? This is an important difference, and the developments that followed make this question even more interesting. But Sange is not the only bastion where this happened, but we'll come to that later. Reports now say that Phal Dessai has been looking at Curchorem as a possible political alternative. Faced with the uncertainty over Sange, he was eyeing Curchore and gauging the support that he could command. But Curchore already has Nilesh Cabral. Nilesh Cabral has represented the constituency for 3 terms, and he has made it very clear that he wants to contest again. Because when he was told that he may have to step down or make sacrifices, the comment that he made or purportedly made, step down for whom? Also, Cabral has very rightly said that the final decision rests with the BJP party. And this is where this stops being merely a story of one politician trying to protect his political future. It becomes a story of the political dynamics within the BJP, which calls itself a party with a difference, but appears to be no different. Because if one leader's constituency is threatened by reservation and he starts looking for another constituency, that inevitably creates a question for the BJP leader who already represents that constituency, in this case, Nilesh Cabral. Cabral has not publicly turned this into a rebellion, not yet. His current position that his party will decide. But the fact that this question has arisen tells us something about the way political constituencies are treated within parties. And then there is Nilesh Cabral in Curchore, as we've been speaking about him. Now, this makes the Phal Dessai story even more interesting because Cabral is no pushover. He has been one of BJP's most loyal leaders in Goa, a minority person, and consequently supported and consistently supported the party line, including as Environment Minister during the controversial debate over 3 linear projects and the railway double tracking. Cabral took the party line and not the people's line eventually. He was subsequently dropped from the cabinet to accommodate Alex Sequeira, the Congress MLA who defected to the BJP. So Cabral had to step down for a defector. Cabral accepted the decision but remained within the party. But subsequently, several projects that he had been planning in Curchore remained pending and in cold storage. And Cabral himself publicly expressed his frustration over the government's failure to take these projects forward. His mission on double tracking also came at considerable political cost. While activists and environmentalists argued that Goa was being turned into a transit corridor for imported coal destined for industries outside the state, including the Adani Group's requirements, Cabral defended the government's position. His argument that Goans would have to make sacrifices because coal was required for electricity particularly angered environmental groups, who pointed out that the coal was being transported through Goa and not meant for Goa's electricity needs. And then, of course, Cabral and others took the line that the country always comes first. So here is a politician who has constantly stood by the party, gone against people in places like Velsau on double tracking, surrendered a cabinet position to accommodate a defector, and then defended the government's most controversial infrastructure decisions. Yet today, The BJP prepares for 2027, even his ticket from Curchorem cannot be granted. And that is what makes this whole thing interesting. Phal Dessai may be looking at Curchorem because Sange could be affected by ST reservation. But even if Phal Dessai does not contest there, the Cabral problem remains. Will the BJP retain him as its future candidate? Because in politics, loyalty may be appreciated, but ultimately, it's the party's calculation of power that decides who gets the ticket. It is not only Phal Desai. The reason that I don't think that the Phal Desai episode should be treated in isolation is because similar questions are emerging elsewhere. Take Babu Kavlekar, for instance. Kavlekar was a four-time MLA from Quepem, served as the Deputy Chief Minister of Goa after defecting to the BJP, of course. He's no longer an MLA, but he remains politically active and has a good chance to come back. And at the moment, one of the major issues he's campaigning around is the demand of the Dhangar community for scheduled tribe status. Now, the Dhangar demand is not something that has suddenly appeared because Babu Kavlekar needs an electoral advantage. It is a long-standing demand. We accept it. The community has been pursuing ST status for more than 2 decades. Last week, a large Dhangar meeting was held in Sanguem with 1,300 people reportedly attending. And the community gave the government August 15th as a deadline to act on the issue, namely reservation for Dhangars as a ST community. Kavlekar was one of the people addressing that particular meeting. But there is a political dimension. If reservation eventually changes the map of political constituencies, such as Quepem, Kavlekar's own political future, if ST status for Dhangars is not given, is directly affected. And therefore, when a politician belongs to a community and when he's seriously campaigning for that community's constitutional recognition, there is bound to be a question about the intersection between community interest and personal political interest. Now, while the demand is legitimate and Kavlekar is pursuing it, a question that is completely justified is, would Cabral be campaigning with the same intensity for ST status? Would Kavlekar be campaigning with the same intensity for ST status if he had no political ambition? Would he continue fighting for the Dhangars if there was no possibility of it affecting his own political future? These are fair questions because they go into the distinction between political leadership and political self-interest. Now, there's one more thing that is interesting here. The community itself is increasingly speaking in political terms. Speakers at that meeting in Sange warned that the community could influence the outcome in several assembly elections if it took a collective political decision. Cabral is listening to the voice of the community. But because he wants to keep banking on this vote bank, he's doing it even more. Now let us go to Mandrem, the Laxmikant Parsekar paradox. A former chief minister looking for space in his own home. The Laxmikant Parsekar story is particularly interesting because Mandrem is simply not a constituency that Parsekar only happened to represent. He's an established political leader there, long before he became a chief minister. It was his political standing in Mandrem and within the BJP that ultimately helped him to propel to the chief minister's chair. But the political question in Mandrem has changed dramatically, and much of the change has to do with the growing influence of Vishwajit Rane in that constituency. It was Rane who was instrumental in bringing Dayanand Sopte into the Congress fold in Mandrem, and when the political equations changed, in bringing Sopte to the BJP as Vishwajit went to the BJP. Sopte subsequently became BJP's candidate from Mandrem, replacing Parsekar as the party's preferred candidate. The political message at that time was fairly clear. The BJP was prepared to move away from its established local leader and back a candidate who politically aligned with the Rane camp. That decision had consequences. Parsekar contested as an independent in 2022 after being denied the BJP ticket, while Sopte contested for the BJP. Neither ultimately won. Jeet Arolkar of the MGP emerged victorious and is now the MLA from there. But Jeet Arolkar happens to be a political ally of the BJP government. So Mandre today presents a very piquant situation. You have a former Chief Minister Parsekar who remains closely associated with the BJP and clearly wants to remain politically relevant. You have Jeet Arolkar who holds the seat and supports the BJP. And then you have Dayanand Sopte who remains a significant part of the political equation and could once again be considered by the BJP for the constituency. And then there is Vishwajit Rane, whose influence over the political architecture of Mandre cannot be ignored. That is why Parsekar's recent political positioning is interesting. He has made it clear that he wants to contest in 2027. But the question is not merely whether he wants to contest, the question is whether the BJP wants to give him space to return to the party's political fold in Mandre. Chief Minister Pramod Sawant's public gesture towards Parsekar has added another layer to it. When Sawant went to wish Parsekar on his birthday, he described him as someone who would always remain a part of the BJP family. That is a politically significant gesture because it keeps the door open without actually promising him a ticket. And that distinction is crucial. Being a part of the BJP family and being a part of BJP's candidate from Mandre are two entirely different things. The party could welcome Parsekar back, of course, acknowledge his contribution, maintain his place in the BJP family, and still decide that Dayanand Sopte is his preferred candidate. If that happens, Parsekar could find himself in a particularly difficult position and also contest against Sopte, which is why this is very important. And this brings back to a larger question that we are examining. What happens to a serious and an established political leader when the political organization he helped to build decides that his political space belongs to somebody else? Therefore, it is not only about a former Chief Minister wanting to return, it's about changing the political power within a constituency. And let there be no mistake, the BJP is battling with this throughout Goa. And then there is Kankon. Where does Ramesh Tavatkar go? There is another constituency which could become extremely interesting, and that is Kankon. Ramesh Tavatkar is not just a sitting MLA, he is one of Goa's most prominent ST leaders and has spent building his political career around that constituency. However, this is a general constituency or will be a general constituency. Now, the internal BJP position is that ST leaders should ideally contest from constituencies that are reserved only for the ST community. If that becomes the party's firm line, then Tavatkar could face a very unusual problem. He may have to move out of the constituency, his own political home, and find a ST reserved seat elsewhere, which is not his home. And that is not going to be a straightforward exercise, and Tavatkar is not liking it. He has represented Kankon, built his organization, has a substantial following. He will simply not agree, unless he is forced to go into an ST constituency that he knows little of. And that is important. And then what happens if he moves to Kankon? The battle for the BJP ticket has already begun. Chetan Desai has announced that he intends to contest, while names like Isidore Fernandez and Vijay Pai Khote, though Vijay Pai Khote is looking at different other parties, but Vijay Pai Khote's past with the BJP cannot be ignored. So the BJP could face a very complicated situation. It has to find an ST constituency for a senior leader like Tavatkar. Of course, Sangue is an obvious possibility, while simultaneously managing expectations of leaders who want Kankon. And that is why this reservation exercise is ultimately creating a big problem for the BJP. Now, the question that I ask here is the BJP becoming like any other party? The BJP now has to manage several competing claims. It has leaders who believe they have earned their constituencies. It has former leaders who believe they deserve another opportunity. It has leaders who have constituencies that will be reservation affected. Now, this is what is important. Ultimately, the party has to decide on all of these things. Perhaps that is the question that we should be asking every politician in Goa, but more so the BJP. If you don't get the ticket, will you still serve the people? If the answer is yes, then the politician has understood the distinction between power and public service. If the answer is no, then we need to reconsider what we mean when we call somebody a political servant. Because the question raised by Phal Dessai is much larger than whether Sanguem will remain ST reserved, or whether Nilesh Cabral will get a BJP ticket, or whether Babu Kavlekar succeeds in campaigning for the Dhangars, or whether Laxmikant Parsekar returns to the BJP and contests from Mandrem. The questions are much larger, very large. Underneath all of them is one important question: what is a politician without power? And perhaps the answer to that question tells us whether he was really a politician in the service of the people or simply a politician in search of power. That is a question I leave with you. That is a question I leave with the BJP as well, because the party with a difference is showing no difference. That's all we have. This is Bullseye. Thank you very much.